Good evening, YouTube. Welcome back to the channel. This is IMAX Sports, another football video, and today I'm going over my Week 15 power rankings of the 2022 NFL season. I do this on the channel every single week, and it's crazy that we're already at Week 15. A lot of upsets this week in the NFL, so let's get right into all of the action. First off, we have the dumpster fire, as always. We have Houston at 32, Denver at 31, the Bears at 30, the Saints at 29, and the Rams at 28. The only movement this week in the dumpster fire was the Rams moved above the Saints with their win over the Raiders. They beat them by 1 point. Baker Mayfield had a huge comeback at the end of the game, scoring 2 touchdowns in the last few minutes of the game to win. That was the only move this week because the Saints didn't play, the Bears didn't play, and the Texans and Broncos both had very strong games against extremely good opponents. The Texans had an amazing game against Dallas, and the Broncos had a phenomenal game against the Chiefs. Denver was never winning. They were down by 28, but they came back to make it very close. And then surprisingly, their offense played well. And then the Texans were winning for most of the game against Dallas, and then Dallas was able to pull it out in the end. So yeah, only move neither of them moved above the the Bears, because I think the Texans and Broncos are very clearly the two worst teams in the league. But yeah, we did have the Rams moving above the Saints to the 28th place. Ooh, moving on, we have bad. We have the Falcons at 27. We have the Colts at 26. This is the category of teams that are not in the dumpster fire. The Falcons, I just realized, have lost 6 of their last 7 games. I've been high on the Falcons all season because they started off strong, and I keep telling myself that they can beat anyone. They can beat anyone. They can beat anyone. But since that win over the Niners, that 28-14 win over the Niners, the Falcons have been horrendous. And their only win in that time frame was against Carolina, where the Falcons beat Carolina in overtime because DJ Moore celebrated and got a penalty on the extra point where Carolina would have won the game. So yeah, that bad stretch of 7 weeks in a row for Atlanta. They could be lower if it wasn't for the teams below them. And then the Colts are 26. Matt Ryan has not been great the last few weeks. They didn't play this week, but for the first 2 weeks of the season, Matt Ryan was doing okay. Then he got injured. Sam Ehlinger came in. He was worse. Then Matt Ryan came back in. He started playing the same he did at the beginning of the year. They won a couple games, and then they died. And the Colts have really been stagnant. Since they were around 20 a while ago, but they've been pretty stagnant, and other teams have gotten decently better. Next up, we have can beat anyone. We have the Browns at 25, we have the Panthers at 24, we have the Cardinals at 23, and we have the Steelers at 22. Any of these teams can beat anyone in the NFL in any given week. Carolina has exemplified that probably the most out of this category. And then all the other teams have at some point in the year. But the Browns are at 25. Deshaun Watson has looked horrible the last few weeks. He's come back last week. This is his second week back. Last week, he looked abysmal. He looked like he could have been considered the worst quarterback in the NFL if he played like that every week. This week, it was an okay performance, but they put up 10 points. And you can't win consistently by putting up 10 points. Last week, they had 0 offensive touchdowns. They had 4 touchdowns on defense and special teams, I believe. And Deshaun Watson really has just been horrible. Obviously, he needs to readjust after not playing for so long. But until he puts together a couple good games, the Browns are going to stay probably in the bottom 10. Panthers are at 24. They had a strong win this week over the Seahawks. Very good game. They controlled most of it. Their running game really was the facet of their team. Their 3 running backs, their three-pronged punch had a really strong attack the whole game. Sam Darnold's a good game manager, although he didn't have the greatest game in the world. And it was a pretty solid performance by the Panthers. And then on defense, they played really well. They made Geno Smith look like a mortal. He's been very strong this year, Geno Smith, and he's had a very good season overall. So good on the Panthers. At 23, we have the Arizona Cardinals. The Cardinals have had a weird season. Their offense has looked better ever since DeAndre Hopkins got back, but their defense has not been great in that time frame. Cardinals can put up points on anyone, and they can have a good defense on some days, but overall they're 4-8. And going into tomorrow night's game, I think that honestly the Patriots are going to lose because I just have no faith in my team. But whether the Cardinals win or lose, they probably won't move very much in the rankings. If they lose, they'll probably stay where they are. And then if they win, they might move above the Steelers. But I don't think my opinion of their team will change at all from tomorrow night's game. As for the Steelers at 22, they looked good since TJ Watt came back. They've looked consistent. They've looked strong. Even this week against the Ravens, I know that Lamar was out, but they almost got the win over the Ravens, who have looked strong with Tyler Huntley, even though they lose most of their games. And yeah, the Steelers had an okay game. They did lose, so they moved down a couple spots, but it was a solid game. Moving on, we have just disappointing. Jaguars don't really belong in this category, but I thought it fit the other three teams. Jaguars are at 21, the Raiders are at 20, and the Packers are at 19. Tampa's at 18. The Packers moved up this week because a lot of other teams moved down, and the Packers have been consistently getting more and more decent. So yeah, they didn't play this week, but they did move up because other teams moved below them. Hence the Raiders, the Steelers, the Browns. I think Arizona wasn't above them, but those three. The Jaguars moved up to 21 with their win over the Titans. Jaguars have had a lot of issues with the Titans the last few years. Derrick Henry especially has dominated them. But with a couple of turnovers by the Titans offense, the Jaguars got right back into it. Trevor Lawrence had a great game. The Jaguars offense overall had a very strong performance, and they were able to get the win. A surprising victory for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And the Jaguars have really beaten a lot of teams. They really could have been in the other category, but I wanted to bump them up here because I think that they might be passing these other teams in the next couple of weeks if they continue to look like this. They're 5-7. I believe they started 2-5 or 2-6. So they're on a roll right now. The Raiders are at 20. They've been up and down this year. And with this loss this week, them and the Steelers are both, in my opinion, officially out of the playoffs. They can both technically make it at 9-8 or potentially 8-9, depending on how horrendously bad the Jets, Patriots, and Chargers finish off the year. But yeah, the Raiders are at 20. Not a great performance this week. They lost to arguably the worst team in the league in the Rams. They lost to Baker Mayfield on his first game on the team, who is on his revenge arc now. And yeah, poor week for the Raiders when they've built up so much momentum to trying to get back into it. Tampa's at 18. Horrendously bad week. Anyone who is watching this video most likely knows what happened in the Tampa game. For those of you who don't know, they lost 35-7. It was one of the worst pass ratings of Tom Brady's career. Brock Purdy is a rookie, Mr. Irrelevant, actually, and Brady doesn't usually lose to rookies. So big win for the 49ers, massive win for Brock Purdy, and the Tampa's season. Tampa's playoffs are not looking great. They will make it because their division's so bad, but their chances of making it far is not great. Moving on, we have the Patriots and the Chargers. Patriots at 17, Chargers at 16. Honestly, there isn't really much to be said for either of these teams. Chargers did get the win this week against the Dolphins. The Dolphins are on a 2-game losing streak now. And the Patriots were able to have not played yet this week. They're playing tomorrow. The Chargers have just been way too inconsistent the last 2 weeks, even to move into the next category, even though I think that the team slightly above them really shouldn't be where they are. I think that everyone lower than number 12 right now shouldn't really be where they are. But the Chargers do get a win over the Dolphins this week, so no matter what happens tomorrow in the Patriots game, the Patriots will probably stay at 17. I don't think a loss will put them below Tampa. I don't think a win will bring them above the Chargers. I think they'll probably just stay where they are. Chargers, I really think that although the teams slightly above them are all on kind of losing streaks, the Chargers really have kind of been up and down. They've lost some really bad games. They've won some really good games. So it's 50-50 what you get from the Chargers. So I think 16 is the perfect spot for them. Moving on, we have should be lower. This is a category introduced last week and one that I'm sticking with. We have the Titans at 15, we have the Seahawks at 14, and the Giants at 13. Tennessee really should be at 20. Like most NFL seasons, this Titans team would not be in the top 16. They've been arguably the worst team in the league the last 3 weeks. This week losing to Jacksonville. They've lost 3 games in a row now. And the only reason why they're at 15 is because I really think that the Patriots offensive coaching is just so horrendously bad that I can't put a team that's 7-6 below us currently. Seahawks lost this week to the Panthers. They have lost, I believe, 3 of their last 4. After they beat the Giants, everyone put them in the top 10, and then they lose 3 of the last 4. And then the Giants, the team that they beat to get into that top 10 before losing other games, has looked pretty bad as well, getting demolished this week. It's not even a loss this week. They just got destroyed by the Eagles. The Eagles took their lunch money. They beat them 48-22. And these 3 teams are all teams that at some point in the season people thought would be serious playoff contenders. I never believed seriously in the Giants, although I did give them credit when they were doing well. I just didn't seriously believe in them. Seahawks I did seriously believe in, or at least I tried to. And then the Titans, I really actually did because I think that Derrick Henry is the best running back in the league. But week after week, the Titans keep disappointing me. So all these teams really should be lower than 13, than 15, but the Patriots and Chargers just really don't deserve to be any higher than they are. Next up, we have the island of playoff mediocrity. We have the Lions at 12, we have the Ravens at 11, we have the Commanders at 10, and we have the Jets at 9. The Lions, I really almost put them above the Ravens this week because Lamar is still out. Until Lamar comes back in, the Ravens are probably going to be out of the top 10. But the Lions, at the beginning of the year, I thought that they could be wild cards in the NFC. And then they started off very poorly, but they have won 4 of their last 5 games. And one of those losses and their only loss was to Buffalo. And they almost won that game. They lost 28-25. And they're 6-7. If they were in the AFC, I would put my money on them to be making the playoffs. Because they're in the NFC, I think it's a little bit of a longer shot. The Ravens are at 9-4 after barely beating the Steelers this week. They are still commanding the NFC North, the AFC North currently at the 9-4 record. Bengals are also 9-4, but the Ravens have tiebreakers since they beat them in their first matchup. If Lamar stays out, then I expect the Bengals to beat the Ravens in their second matchup. But if Lamar comes back in, then I think the Ravens will be able to win that division, especially with the 4 games that the Bengals have left. They have the Ravens, they have the Patriots, they have the Buccaneers, and they have the Bills. 4 teams who are currently fighting for playoff spots or in playoff spots. And I think the Bengals could lose any of those games, especially with Tom Brady and Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. So yeah, Ravens at 11, but they could be higher once Lamar gets back. At 10, we have Washington. Washington's been one of the better teams the last couple of weeks. They're on a bit of a winning streak. The Giants broke their winning streak with the tie. They were on a bye week this week, but they moved up because the Ravens moved down with their win over the Steelers. They didn't move down. They were at 10 last week, but they're tied with the Giants. And then the Giants moved to 13. The Ravens moved up this week. And then we have the Jets at 9. The Jets had a close game against Buffalo. They stayed in the same place as last week, similar to Washington. Just a couple of teams just below them moved around. I didn't think that I could put Washington above the Jets with this loss to Buffalo, since the Jets did split with Buffalo. It's not like they just lost flat out. They beat them early on in the season. Buffalo also only won by 8, and the Jets had a pretty strong defensive performance against Josh Allen, much better than the Patriots last week. They were able to control Stephon Diggs. They were able to control a lot of their players, and the Jets' offensive efficiency was really the only issue. Mike White played okay. Overall, the Jets' offense looked pretty solid, but it was not efficient enough to get into the red zone and then to get into the end zone. Super Bowl contenders, we have the Dolphins at 8, we have the Vikings at 7, and we have Buffalo at 6. Last week I told a lot of Vikings fans that Minnesota will not be moving in my power rankings next week because a lot of them were upset that I had their 10-2 team at number 7. And I said basically whatever happens for the rest of the year, Minnesota probably won't be moving much further below 7. Well, this week was not expected. I did not expect... I picked the Lions. I picked the Lions in my pick'em. I didn't seriously expect them to win. So, yeah. The loss this week was bad. The Lions dominated pretty much most of the game. But I'm keeping the Vikings at 7 because I said I would. The Dolphins were able to scrape up the victory against the Chargers. And Buffalo is at 6. Buffalo didn't move because they beat the Jets, but it wasn't the most impressive game in the world. And They really just haven't had the same finesse the last few weeks as they did the first half of the season. First half of the season, Buffalo was by far the best team. The last 5 to 6 weeks, they've been really shaky. They've been extremely shaky, and I need to see Buffalo get back to where Buffalo was before they can get back into the elite. Moving on to the NFL's elite, we have the Kansas City Chiefs all the way down at 5. They were at number 1 a couple weeks ago. Now they're down to 5. Bengals are at 4. The Cowboys are at 3. Niners are at 2. And the Eagles are at 1. I put the Eagles back at number 1 last week with their dominant win. And then this week, they just smoked the Giants. I had the Eagles at, I believe, 4 for a couple weeks because they lost the thread. For a few weeks in a row, the Colts game, the Washington game, they didn't look great. The game after the Colts game as well, they were having turnovers. They didn't look like the Eagles. Last week, bang, they're right back in it. They looked phenomenal. They looked like the Eagles again. And then this week, they just came at the Giants with everything they had, 48-22. They're keeping that 1 spot. The Niners are at number 2. And so I was hesitant to bring up the Niners for a lot of the season. I was waiting on them. They lost to Kansas City by a lot when Christian McCaffrey got there for the first time. And I waited. I slowly improved the Niners throughout the season. A lot of people jumped them right up to number 5. I slowly brought them up. And then Jimmy Garoppolo goes down. All of the experts, NFL.com, ESPN, CBS Sports, they all sliced the Niners. They had the Niners at 4 for all the weeks they were like beating terrible teams. And then they lose Jimmy Garoppolo. They go down to 9. I had them at 4 last week because I thought that the difference between Jimmy Garoppolo and Brock Purdy would not be as big as people thought it would, considering Brock Purdy beat the Dolphins last week. This week, Brock Purdy comes in. He has a fantastic game. The defense looks as good as it possibly could have against Tom Brady. They win 35-7. What gives? The 49ers are the second best team in the league right now. Obviously, this could change at the end of the season, but at this moment in time, the 49ers are the second best team in the league. Part of that is due to the Cowboys game this week. If it was any other team, then the Cowboys would have stayed at number 2 with a close win. Any other team in the entire league, including the Broncos, the Cowboys would have stayed at number 2 with that type of win. Because it was the Texans, because of how close it was, it came down to a 3rd down conversion, I believe, in the end zone to get the last touchdown. That's way too close for comfort for a top 2 team against the Houston Texans. I mean, even the Eagles game wasn't as close as this game was. The Texans played the Eagles tough. And the Eagles even had a more dominant game than this was. Houston was winning for most of the game. So yeah, that was a horrible game by the Cowboys, bringing them down to number 3. Bengals are at 4, and the Chiefs are at 5. They were at 3. They were at 3 and 4 last week, I believe. So now the Niners have leapfrogged both of them to 4 and 5. So those are my Week 15 power rankings. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I'm excited for the Patriots-Cardinals game tomorrow night. I'm excited to either win or officially be able to give up on the season. So thank you guys for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed. Leave a like on the video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you're new to the channel. I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.